Okay, so maybe you've seen different colors, different shapes, different types of cacao, and you're wondering what the difference is. So there's different types: Forastero, Trinitario, Criollo, but I'm not going to tell you about those because there's lots of videos telling you about those. What I'm going to tell you guys about is the difference between this cacao, which is Aroma Nacional of Ecuador. It's a Criollo variety, meaning it's a very fine heirloom variety, over 5,000 years old, and it's usually used to make fine chocolate. The red variety that you see here in Ecuador, that I showed you a picture of earlier, that is a hybrid variety called CCN51. And I explain that a little bit more later. But just so you know, the thing with the Aroma Nacional, the reason why we grow it here on our farm here at Sueño de Vida in the cloud forest of Ecuador is because a lot of times cacao gets a bad rap for being responsible for deforestation. Well, it's not the cacao, it's the how. It's how it's planted. Okay, so if cacao is planted in a big monoculture with nothing but cacao, then yeah, you have to go in there and clean out all the pre-existing trees just to plant cacao. But Aroma Nacional, and interestingly, it's also better in flavor, it's better in aroma, it's used to make fine chocolate, and it's used for all the traditional uses that cacao is used for in Ecuador here, is grown in an agroforestry setting, meaning that it's growing in the presence of other trees. It needs to grow with shade. It needs to grow with ground cover. It needs to grow with lemons and limes and other fruits to give it flavor. So Aroma Nacional does not thrive in a big sunny open field in a monoculture. It needs the presence of other plants. So Aroma Nacional cannot be responsible for deforestation because of the way that it grows. So if we would grow the right types of cacao, the heirloom varieties that we want to preserve that are also better in flavor and better in aroma, cacao wouldn't be responsible for deforestation.
Aroma Nacional is very, very old. We know that this has been cultivated in Ecuador for 5,300 years. They found pods mummified, stored inside a ceramic in the shape of a cacao pod. Wow. In the Zamora Chinchipe province in the south of Ecuador, carbon dated to 5,300 years old. So this is the original cacao, and this is the cacao that started what they call like the gold rush, which was back around like between 1910 and 1920 in Ecuador, which was like the formation of basically like the upper middle class in Ecuador was based on like the bourgeois of Ecuador, like made its wealth on the back of Aroma Nacional cacao. It became very popular. All the fine chocolate makers in Europe wanted it. And so what they did was Aroma Nacional needs to be grown in an agroforestry setting. It needs shade and it needs the presence of other plants around it for protection. They started trying to grow Aroma Nacional in a monoculture. And it was a huge disaster because fungal blight destroyed all the crops. And Ecuador went from being the world's biggest exporter of cacao to being like to the bottom. Like they just completely lost their position. So a bunch of agronomists got together and they decided to formulate a more hardy hybrid called the CCN51 that you can grow in full sun. And it's supposed to be more resistant to fungi and like invasions, and especially one that's really, I showed you guys a little bit, the escoba de bruja, the witch's broom. Yeah. So it was witch's broom that destroyed the original Aroma Nacional. It wasn't like just a monesia, or it was witch's broom. It actually killed all the trees. So this is supposed to be more resistant to witch's broom, but you'll still find witch's broom if you're not always in there, like looking for it and checking in, like taking it out, you know? So that's the story of the two different kinds of cacao here, why there's Aroma Nacional and how old it is. It's truly heirloom, and why there's the CCN51. So we're growing this one because we also want to preserve like the heritage and preserve, the heritage of fine cacao in Ecuador and have these seeds, because these are actually, if not enough people grow this, like it will go extinct. It's like on the verge of becoming endangered. So Aroma Nacional cacao is 1% of all cacao grown in the world. So it would be important to